So this is how I looked. Go next slide, please. At that point. So this was just a couple of years ago. My weight had ballooned up to over 300 pounds. And I didn't know it at the time because I had never done research on this, but I was morbidly obese. There's actually classifications of obesity, and class 3 is morbid. That basically means you're going to die. And I didn't want to die. And so I committed to my wife to make some changes in my life. And so we talked over different things that we could do. And we put together a plan, and I said, okay, I don't want to leave you a single mom. We had friends, you know, we're not very old, but we had friends that had major health complications due to their weight. And I didn't want to end up like them. And so I said, okay, I'm going to make some changes. So I tried, and I worked really, really hard. And over the next few months, I started learning more about weight loss and healthy living. And I did everything I could or felt that I could do. And then, like most people, you can probably guess what happened. I gained more weight. And it was so frustrating because I was trying to do everything right, but I put on a little more weight. And then as the new year started, I set New Year's resolutions like I always did. But this year, so this was at the beginning of last year, instead of having 40 or 50 goals like I traditionally had, I only set one goal. And the goal was to lose 40 pounds. And that would have taken me from morbid obesity down to just class 1 obese. And I thought that's a good step. Honestly, I didn't think I could do it because I'd never lost more than 4 or 5 pounds in a year, but I knew that I needed to make a change. And so over the first few months of 2019? Over the first few months, I tried to do different things, and I continued to research. I watched YouTube videos, I read books, I listened to podcasts, and I did everything I thought I could do. And I still wasn't losing any weight. But as a school teacher, I have that luxury of summer months where I have more flexibility over my schedule. I still work incredibly hard over the summer, but I don't have to be, normally I go to school at 5 in the morning, and over the summer I don't have to do that. And so I had that extra time to take care of my health. So on the first day of summer, I went out on the country road by our house and I went running. And the goal was just to run a mile. And that's a hard thing to do when you're 300 pounds. A lot of things are hard to do when you're 300 pounds. It's hard to tie your shoes, which is why I had no shoelaces. I only had slip-on shoes. It's hard to even go out in public. It's embarrassing to go walking and start sweating just because you're going somewhere really easy to go. It's embarrassing when you're in a parking lot and you need to leave, but you can't fit in between the two cars. So you have to wait for someone to come in their car and drive away so that you can get in your own car door because you wouldn't fit in otherwise. I was sick of that life and I didn't want to continue living that way. And so I went running on that first day, just shooting to do a mile, and I couldn't. But I didn't quit. So after I had to stop and catch my breath, I walked, and then I tried to jog some more, and then I walked. And I completed the mile. I just didn't run the whole thing. And then the next day I went out and I tried again. And the next day I went out and I tried again. And eventually I started building up some stamina and some physical strength. And while I was doing that, I was also incorporating all the things I had learned about health and diet. And fortunately, some of those things worked. And so I started to lose some weight. And as I lost weight, I started to feel better. And I started to get a handle on what was working and what wasn't. I learned to pay attention to my body. And the weight continued to come off. So by the end of the summer, I lost 40 pounds. And I was so excited about that. And I thought, if I can lose 40 pounds, why not 50? And so then I lost some more weight. And after I lost 50, I said, well, what about 75? And by the end of the year, I'd lost 103 pounds. And I'd gone from 41% body fat down to 17%. And I was feeling really good. So that's kind of my health journey in a nutshell. Now, I'm not going to give you all the dietary tips, which is unfortunate because that is the big part of losing weight. But that's not the purpose of this discussion. I will just say that for me, at least, losing weight was 90% diet and 10% exercise. But what I'm excited about is that 10% exercise, because in the time since then, I've learned a lot more about what that exercise did for me personally, not just for my health, but for my mental health, for my productivity, and for alleviation of stress. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight. as I lost weight, I found that a lot of things in my life got easier and better. The first thing that was noticeable was my sleep. I started sleeping much, much better, sleeping through the night, which I hadn't done in years. And I slept more comfortably. I felt more rested in the morning. And that was a huge thing for me. And the more weight I lost, the better I slept, which was really exciting. With that improved sleep, I found that I had increased alertness during the day. And so I was more productive. I started accomplishing even more. In the year that I lost 100 pounds, I wrote and published my first 2 books. I refinished my basement with my wife. We landscaped our yard. I read over 100 books. I did all of these things that I'd always wanted to do and thought I was capable of, but I never had the energy to do it. And so as I was losing weight, I found that I had more energy to accomplish awesome things. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about that. As I'd go out running, I would think about what was working and what wasn't. How come I was being more productive when I'd been trying all my life? I mean, I've always been a really hard worker, but things just seemed to be working better as I got into better physical condition. And so I started doing research, which wasn't a stretch because I'm a learning scientist. I've studied the brain for years and years. But I'd never looked specifically at the impact that exercise had on what our brain does. Now, what I found was really, really cool. I found that our brain reacts to exercise. Now, this is just common sense that our brain reacts to exercise because when you exercise, it forces more blood and more oxygen to our brain. But I hadn't really thought about what that meant. And so I started studying and I looked at different research studies and I found some really cool things. Now I'm going to show you one of those cool things. From a study that happened in 2009, we found that this is what your brain looks like when you've just been sitting. Now, I was concerned about this. You don't see a lot of activity going on in this brain. And as a school teacher, I want my students' brains to be really active, but they spend a lot of time sitting at their desk. So this was a little bit concerning to me that there wasn't a lot of brain activity going on just sitting. And in this particular study, when they measured the brain, it was looking at children who were in a classroom. And so this is what their brains look like. Now, after they did some experiments and they found that after, I'm having a hard time advancing my slides here. Come on, little slide. There we go. After a 20-minute walk, this is what the brain looks like, which is remarkable. So just 20 minutes walk, not really heavy exercise or anything, it activated a major part of the brain. Now, the cool thing about that, especially in a school setting, is if your brain is more active, it reacts in different ways. So let me unshare now. So the brain, when it's active, it's going to activate different parts of the brain. Now, it showed there was a lot of activity back in the back of the brain. That's the part of your brain that has to do with making connections and transferring that to your long-term memory. But when you move, that also is triggering something in your inner ear called your vestibular nerve. And the vestibular nerve helps you to keep focus, it helps with balance, and it helps with short-term memory. So the cool thing about activating your brain over a period of time is it takes that increased focus and attention, and then it helps you transfer things into your long-term memory. So now, as I started thinking about what I was learning and how I was growing as I got healthy, it made sense that my brain was more active during those times. In fact, I thought back over the times when I got my best ideas, when I made the most important connections, and almost always those ideas came when I was out on a jog or a bike ride or walking with my wife in the evening. That's where I would get all my best ideas, which makes sense because that's when my brain is most active. So I started thinking about how I could incorporate this in my classroom. And I want to talk to you a little bit about brain boosts. Now, this isn't just applicable to students in a classroom. Most of us spend most of our days sitting either behind a computer screen or in an office or in a classroom. That's just the way that a lot of people live their lives. And so what I started thinking about was this idea I actually heard of a thing called brain breaks. And brain breaks are things that have been in the education system for a while. And it was developed by a company who developed educational games and as a reprieve from the hard academic content that you'd have during the day. So the idea was your brain needs to rest. And so let's do something fun for a few minutes to give your brain a rest, and then we'll get back into the hard academic content. Well, that makes no sense given the research, because your brain isn't resting during physical activity. It's actually becoming more active. And so I've renamed these brain breaks, brain boosts, because instead of resting, your brain is getting amped up so that you can learn better in the future. And I started incorporating brain boosts into my classroom. At first, I just did it myself. I started when I'd get to class in the morning, I'd do some push-ups and sit-ups, jumping jacks. But then I thought, what were some things that I could do with my class that would be fun? And we did some obvious things like games. There's a game called Four Corners where you run to different corners of your classroom. I tried putting on some YouTube videos to some dance from Just Dance. And we would just dance along with the people on the screen. And at first we did it so as a class we could learn Thriller, so we could be really awesome when Halloween came. But then we started doing it to other dances, and I found my students loved to dance. And so after an hour or two in class, we would dance for 5 minutes, and then we'd settle back into our curriculum. Now, I was really worried about this at first because my students perform at a really high level, and I didn't want to take away from academic curricular time. And so I made a deal with my students. I said, if we do these brain boosts, and I didn't call them brain boosts at first because I didn't know the research that well, but I said, if we're gonna have fun and play these games, you need to show me that you can transition right back into learning immediately afterwards. So if you guys have a hard time settling back down and getting back into your desk, we just won't keep doing these things. And they wanted to have fun in the classroom. So as soon as we finished, within seconds, they'd be back in their desks ready to learn. And so it was really awesome for me because it actually made transitions go smoother, where instead of taking away from classroom time, it actually gave me more classroom time because the students were better behaved. They were more attentive. They had just, activated those vestibular nerves and activated their brains with more oxygen and blood. And so they were ready to learn. And the result was their test scores started going up. And we started incorporating more brain boosts during the day, and they continued to do better and better in class, and we were having more fun. So that was the first thing I found out, was that brain boost actually helps us to learn better. Now, in my own personal life, I found that it made me more productive because I had more energy. And, some of those obvious things that come with exercise is you're going to have a better immune system. It prevents against some of those major diseases, heart disease, osteoporosis, things like that. But what I hadn't really considered was how it was making me feel, what it was doing with my mental health. And so recently I've been studying the effects of stress and how the brain can help with stress. And there have been some cool things that I've learned specifically about what brain does with stress. Now, stress is a tricky thing. Right now we're feeling it as we're indoors with COVID-19 because we've broken our routines. We've had to change things up, and we're doing things that are anxiety inducing. Now, stress depletes our energy. It makes it harder to concentrate. It makes it harder to sleep. Stress has a really tight connection with sleep. And so it makes sense then that exercise would counteract some of those anti-anxiety things. So exercise reduces fatigue. It improves alertness and concentration. It enhances your overall cognitive function. And so it's going to help you to sleep better, which is going to reduce your stress. There have been studies that have shown that aerobic exercise decreases overall levels of tension. It elevates and stabilizes your mood, and it improves your self-esteem. And the cool thing about that is the studies that have been done on aerobic exercise show that you get all of those benefits: better self-esteem, better mood, better levels of tension, with as little as 5 minutes of exercise. So again, this plays into this brain boost idea that we can do small things throughout the day that will impact stress. It also bumps up the production of your feel-good neurotransmitters in your brain. Those are called endorphins. So if you want more endorphins, physical activity is going to help with that. And then it also distracts you from other concerns that you have. So if you're doing especially more intense physical activity, it's hard to be worried about other things because our brain concentrates on the hardest thing that we're doing at the time. So one of the benefits of physical activity is it helps you to kind of move away from other concerns for a while, which is kind of cool. So I want to use these last few minutes before Q&A to just mention a few of the things that I do during the day and some things that I do with my kids to promote brain boost during the day. And the cool thing is, again, research has shown that the benefits that we get from exercise, we can get those benefits in working out for 30 minutes a day. And it can be one session of 30 minutes. But we can also break that up into several smaller sessions. So you can do exercise for as little as 1 minute, and it's still going to elevate your heart rate. It's still going to get the oxygen and blood pumping, and you're still going to see all the benefits that we've talked about tonight will come with exercising for as little as 1 minute. Now, if you're only doing it 1 minute at a time, you should probably do it several times throughout the day. But you can do that. And so that's the cool thing. So here are some things that I like to do throughout the day just to get a little exercise. My favorite thing, slow walks. And I found that slow walks don't have the same physical benefit as brisk walks, but they do help clear my mind and help me to be more productive and help me to reduce stress. When I go on slow walks, especially if I go with someone else, I'll often go with my wife, I find that to be a really relaxing thing for me. I hate brisk walks. I know a lot of people do that for exercise. If I'm going to elevate my heart rate into my target heart rate zone, I'd rather be running. So I go running often or bike riding. Other things I do during the day, I mentioned earlier that I like to dance with my kids. Now that we're all stuck at home, we have different times throughout the morning where we take breaks from schoolwork, where we come down to the basement and we dance together. We also have 2 other breaks during the day. One at the very beginning of the day where we'll put on really loud music. I've been exposing my kids to a lot of hard rock and heavy metal from the 80s and 90s. It's been great. But we will we'll exercise for 5 minutes. We'll do as many push-ups, sit-ups, and jumping jacks as we can. And it's fun for the kids to see if they can do more than dad. So far, not so much. But they're building up their stamina, and it's a great way to start the day. So we'll start with that. We'll take a break. We have a trampoline in our backyard, so we'll go out and jump on the trampoline for a few minutes. And we'll try a lot of things like that together as a family. Now, as an adult, I have found that a lot of things that some people do for fun are not fun for me. Like, I hate the gym. So I'm not going to go to the gym to get my exercise, but I can go walking or running. My wife hates running. And so she prefers other forms of exercise. So when it comes to the benefits that you're going to get, if you want it to make a real lasting impact, you have to find something that you can do long term. So I recommend trying new things out. I'm still trying new sports. I'm trying new activities. I just bought a road bike to try that out, especially I'm feeling right now I need to get out more than usual because it's hard to be stuck in your house all day long. And so I've been going for more bike rides by myself. And so you have to find what works for you, and it's going to be different for everyone. But the coolest thing about this is if you really want to increase your learning, if you want to increase your productivity, and if you want to decrease the stress that you have in your life, almost any physical activity will do that for you. It just being active at all is going to help you in all 3 of those areas. So you just need to find what you enjoy, what you can do at home, and test different things out. So that's my spiel for you. I'm looking forward to any questions or comments you might have. I know that they've asked if you have any, you can put them in the chat or you can send them directly to me. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any. Oh, wait. So I do have a question. Is there any benefit to doing exercise in a routine versus spontaneous exercise?
Yes, there are benefits to both of those. So the benefit to routine is it's more likely to last. We know this with routine in regards to not just physical activity, but a lot of things in our life, that if you are involved in a routine, you're more likely to stick with it. So if you establish a habit, so if you do it over a period of time, you're more likely to stick with it. And that consistency will help you to get the three benefits I mentioned earlier. It will help with physical health, it will help with your mental health, and it will help with your productivity. Now, the advantage of spontaneity, there's really two major advantages. One is trying new things out is going to help you understand what you enjoy. But the other thing is mostly a physical benefit. When we try new things, we use different muscles. And when we use different muscles, you have to walk before you run. You have to kind of ease into things. You don't want to go crazy or you'll get injured. But if you can ease into something new that you haven't tried before, it is going to work different muscles. And when we use muscles that we haven't used for a while, it breaks them down and then they have to heal themselves or build themselves back up. And that's how we build muscle. So having some spontaneity or some variety in your workouts is really going to give you a lot of health benefits. It's not going to make as big a difference in the cognitive benefits and in how it impacts your brain. Your brain doesn't discern much between routine or spontaneity in regards to physical activity. That's a great question.
And then we have another one. I think you can see this one. What would be some suggestions for getting teens on board with some of these ideas?
So teens are tricky. And it's especially hard for me because I grew up in a generation where when we were bored, we would go outside and play. And there were things to do outdoors, and it was either sports or exploring or things. But culturally, we've really kind of moved away from that unless it's some organized activity. So kids aren't as accustomed now to just going out and playing and doing things. So what we found is if your kids don't want to play organized sports, or if they don't really care for running or swimming or biking or anything like that, then you have to find what they do enjoy. I have teenagers right now, and they don't love jumping on the trampoline by themselves, but they do like jumping with someone who's much heavier than them that can send them really far in the air. And so I can get them to go out and jump with me on the trampoline. And also, my kids have seen that the commitment that I've made to living a healthier lifestyle has made a positive difference in my life. So like this fall, I ran a 52.4 mile ultra marathon. I had to work really hard and train for it. And it was really a challenge for me, and I made some sacrifices. But my son, my 14-year-old son who hates to run, he saw what a commitment I had made to it, and he started training with me. Even though he hates to run, he wanted to support dad and show that support. So he would go out with me on Saturday runs. And when I ran that ultra marathon, he ran the first leg of it with me, running 6 miles, which is the most he'd ever run before, just because he saw that it meant a lot to me. So a lot of that is setting an example as parents and being physically active, but then really looking to what your kids enjoy. And you know, my kids love playing laser tag, and we can't afford to play laser tag all the time. But we found that if you go before 4 o'clock, you can get half price at laser tag at the Fiddler Fun Center. And we now look for opportunities to do that because it is a great workout. Obviously not now during COVID-19, it's not happening. But normally we would go do something like that, and our kids love it. And so we're just looking for things that they enjoy. We do have our teenagers dance with us. At first they thought it was cheesy, but now we turned it into a competition. And again, they want to beat dad. And so it's become a little more fun for them. So I hope that helps a little bit.
And then we got Trevor joining us on Facebook. He wants to know, is the goal to raise your heart rate, or does muscle conditioning exercises have more advantage?
For the cognitive benefits, for your mental health, for productivity, building muscle doesn't have a direct correlation. It's simply the process of raising your heart rate and getting more blood and oxygen to your brain. That's what's going to have the impact. That's where you get your endorphins that give you like the runner's high that makes you feel better. So that's going to help with stress. And so it's not necessarily building muscle that will give you those kinds of benefits, Now, of course, we want to build muscle because indirectly, excuse me, indirectly, the stronger we are, the better we're going to sleep, the better that we're going to move during the day, the less likely we are to have injury and other health problems. And so building muscle can be important, but it doesn't have as important a role in developing that mental health and reducing stress as just doing any kind of exercise. So you can just stick to aerobic. You don't have to do a lot of anaerobic exercise. I still do anaerobic exercise because you do get those endorphins really, really fast. You guys know that if you go to the gym and you're really pumping some iron, you feel great for a while, and especially right after the workout. And so there are definitely benefits to doing that, but you can get those same benefits through aerobic workouts.
Thank you, Tyler, for joining us this evening. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge and everything you've researched. I think we are ready to call it a night. Haven, any last words?
No, all of us at SUU Community Education truly hope you enjoyed learning something new. You can watch the recording of this and all of our free online classes at suu.edu/keeplearning or on our YouTube channel, Be Wise Keep Learning. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next week for more lessons on navigating close quarters, reducing stress, parenting, and more. Have a great night, guys.